Starting off at number 10 now, we have The Being. We're starting off with a great one here. This Reddit user said, a lot of this story takes place a couple of years ago. However, the final part happened just a couple of nights ago, so I figured I should post it. This all sort of started 2 years ago. I was walking my puppy down to the beach after dinner. She splashed around in the water a bit, not very important to this story. What is important is when I was walking her back to my house, there was a man with the biggest smile on his face just walking down the sidewalk with over-exaggerated arm movements. As we passed, he politely said good evening to me. A couple of months later, I was in the car with my mom and sister. That same man was walking down the sidewalk and my sister pointed out his odd arm motion. Almost immediately, my mom told her to not make fun of him and that is just something he does. She then quickly said she's known him for a while. A couple of weeks ago, I was out jogging at night. Since it was late, I was very paranoid when I was out, so I was looking all around the whole time. For a couple of minutes, I was just staring ahead. There was no way I could have missed anything. Who else showed up almost out of thin air? That same exact man. There was something noticeably different. Everything about him had reversed. The once overjoyed man had an almost cartoonishly huge frown and was walking with the biggest slump. He passed by me without saying a single thing, which seemed odd just for politeness sake. I got home and immediately told both of my parents about the encounter. While attempting to explain the whole thing to my parents, my mom looked incredibly confused. She told me she had no idea who the man was, even after I reminded her about the car ride where he showed up. Finally, 2 days ago, I saw the man again. He was on the other side of the street from me. There was absolutely nowhere for him to go. But when I turned around, he was nowhere to be seen. This whole thing has me incredibly freaked out. I haven't even been jogging since the incident. I can't even explain the feeling I had the last 2 times I saw him. I just know I've never felt more disturbed in my life, and I have no idea why. Both times seeing the man at night, I felt shaken to my very core. If anyone has any theories, I would love to hear them. Next up at number 9 now, we have the husband glitch. They say that people and places can phase between parallel worlds, but can text messages. This story comes from Reddit user Aunt Masto, who said, I'm a newlywed. We'd been married less than a month when I woke up at 5:30 AM next to my husband's sleeping form and saw a notification on my phone. It was a text from him, Sam, with a love heart sent at midnight. Sam said, who is this? Now, I'm pretty sure that Sam was stretched out next to me, snoring away at midnight. I'm a light sleeper, and it's likely I would have woken if he hadn't got out of bed or turned on his phone. Still, stranger things have happened. I figured he was playing a weird joke on me or something. I decided to play along, so I wrote back, who is this? Seconds later, Sam replied, I asked you first. I could feel Sam pressed against my right side, warm and breathing regularly. I looked at his nightstand and confirmed his phone was still there, dark and silent. I said, seriously, who is this? Why are you coming up on my phone under one of my contacts' names? Sam said, what name am I under? I said, obviously there's some cross wires here somewhere. We don't know each other. Sam said, are you in? And it was the name of the town that we both lived in. I said, yes. Are you? He said, yes. I said, okay, there you go. Wires are crossed. It's weird, but I'm sure it happens. He said, we must live near each other. What street are you on? I tried to change the subject because I definitely did not want to tell this person the street that I was on. I asked him, do I come up on your phone under someone else's name? Sam said, I was looking through my contacts and I saw one that I didn't remember created under the name Wi-Fi with a heart like this next to it. I was just curious who this was. I live on Violet Street, by the way. I went cold. My husband's nickname for me is Wi-Fi, but pronounced Wi-Fi. It's a silly inside joke. No one knows about it but us, or so I had thought. And we do live on Violet Street, and we both make little love hearts next to each other's names. And something about this person's writing style was so familiar. I confirmed that my husband was still slumbering next to me. His phone was still on the nightstand. Someone was messing with me. I turned my phone off, got up and got ready for work. Later that morning, I showed the text to Sam, who was baffled. His phone had no messages on it. He texted me to test things out, and his message hi popped up right underneath the last message the other Sam had sent to me. That one weirds me out. Give me your theories, guys, please. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the closet. Have you guys ever seen someone that looks a lot like you? You probably think nothing of it, but sometimes it makes people really question their own reality. Reddit user Please Probe Me, nice name, said, I used to work at a dog rescue in the Midwest before moving home to the East Coast. It was a small rescue, about 10 employees max, and we were all tightly knit. Nobody there resembled me. I am exceptionally short and have different hair than anyone there. So it wasn't easy to mistake someone else for me or vice versa. The place was also haunted. We all heard a female voice yelling at us or singing near us when we were completely alone. Almost everyone saw apparitions or reflections when nobody was there, so this place was already full of some weird energy to begin with. Then it got weirder. During my last couple of months, co-workers started sending me odd texts. They would text me on my days off asking me why I was there and where I had just disappeared to. I would always reply that I wasn't there. While I was there, occasionally someone would jump at the sight of me and say something like, "What the hell, you were just outside, I saw you through the window," or "I just saw you in the storage room, how did you get here so fast?" They couldn't understand how I'd gotten from point A to point B impossibly fast. Every time I would be baffled and explain that I wasn't where they thought I was before. A good example that I remember was this one. I was in the backyard. The only door in from there goes through the main adoption room, then exits on the other end about 50 feet away into a hallway containing a kitchen and some private meeting rooms. I walked in from outside and saw my co-worker coming into the room from the hallway. She looked at me and gasped. Then she opened the door behind her to the hallway. She explained that she had just seen me in the kitchen doing dishes, but when she opened the door, which lay about 6 feet beyond the kitchen door, there I was coming in from the outside. It was actually impossible. This is where we started to understand that something very strange was going on. We all sat around and talked about it, and it turned out almost everyone was seeing a phantom version of me. Every time they saw it, it was turned around and didn't interact with them. It would get into some strange places too. For example, someone watched me go into the closet holding the water tank and followed me, asking me some questions about work matters. As soon as they turned into the closet, I was gone. Now, I personally hadn't walked into that closet at all around that time, let alone on that day. My best guess is that I was in the middle of making a major life decision about either staying in this city at this job and taking a promotion or coming back to the East Coast. The decision was extremely stressful for me to make as I really loved that job. I'm surmising that my energy literally just split somehow and that a parallel version of me was hanging around there after I endured so much angst over staying or leaving. If I want to get super weird about it, I could say that maybe in another reality I decided to stay there, and maybe those two timelines were intersecting and glitching onto one another. They continued to see me after I moved home thousands of miles away. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the wise dog. They say that animals have a sixth sense. Perhaps that extends to parallel universes. Reddit user Great Larry Bird 33 said, "I have a 10-month-old son, great kid, and is just starting to crawl and move around on his own. Tonight before I put him to bed, he passed out on this big pillow in our living room after he'd had a bottle. I picked him up and put him in his crib in his room down the hall, then let the dog out and sat down to watch some TV before I brushed my teeth and went to bed. My dog walked down the hall to my bedroom to go to bed, and about an hour later I get up to turn the TV off and notice my son asleep facing away from me on the same pillow I picked him up from an hour before. I'm now thinking that given his skill level at walking and crawling, there is no way he was getting out of his crib, down the hall, and back there again. I chalked it up to me not paying attention. So I walked over, picked him up, slung him over my left shoulder, went over to the front window, shut that, and went back down the hall to go put him in bed. I opened the door to his room, turned the corner, and with the dim light from the nightlight, I noticed that he is now in his crib, rolled towards me, asleep. It took me about a second to put together what was happening. How did I have him on my shoulder and he was in bed at the same time? What felt like a millisecond later, I hear my dog kind of bark and whimper in a confused tone right behind me. Then I look to my left, bringing my arm down, and see that his stuffed animal monkey is in my arm. Now, I am as sure as anything in my life that I picked up my son and that I would have known the difference between a 25-pound kid and a 1-pound stuffed animal. Now, I've checked the carbon monoxide detectors, the windows were open, and I've only had a single beer tonight. Weirdest thing though is my big old black lab will not leave my son's room. I'm really baffled. Wow, me too. Please give me your theories, guys. Next up at number 6 now, we have the vanishing road. Have you ever seen something disappear? I don't mean actually in front of your eyes, I mean it was there one day and the next it was just gone. Was that your poor memory? Maybe your eyes playing tricks on you? Reddit user Padjo95 has this story that might make you think it's something else. They said, "I swear up and down that this actually happened. About 4 years ago, I lived in this fairly small fly speck of a town. At the time, I had lived there for about 12 years, so I knew my way around. Our house was about a mile and a half away from the nearest neighborhood. Our mom intentionally picked that house due to the lack of neighbors. It was tucked away on a back road with the woods surrounding it. Every now and again, I liked to take walks with my little brother, who at the time was about 13. We decided to do just that. We headed up the road and decided to try and find a new path or a new clearing that we hadn't discovered yet, when we noticed something a little shocking. Just off the road that led almost directly to the neighborhood, there was a brand new paved road. Every road in that part of town was a gravel road, so seeing an out of place paved road was pretty unusual. We stared at it for a while and came to the conclusion that it must have been made within the last few days due to the modern but slow growth of the town. However, we had no explanation for how they did it so fast. We decided to explore it a bit. I remember as soon as we set foot on the road, the air became noticeably colder by at least 5 degrees. The road itself was a black pavement, but no dividing lines. It was surrounded by some thick red trees that resembled redwoods, but they were too short and non-native to our state in southern Arkansas. We walked on the road for about 3 miles until we decided to head back due to it getting dark. When we got off the road, we felt the temperature go back up. My brother and I agreed to explore it the next day. At roughly noon the following day, we set back out to explore this place, only to discover that the entire road was now missing. When I say missing, I mean the trees that were cleared to make it had apparently grown back, with no sign of the redwood-like trees. We even began to explore the woods once more, but found no sign that it ever existed. When we asked our parents about it, they said they knew nothing about any new road work being done near us. Has anyone ever experienced anything like this? Moving on to number 5 now, we have the play. There are theories that with every moment that passes in time, an infinite amount of alternate realities are born. Sometimes people claim to see them, like Reddit user Airmail Dolphin, who said, "I had an experience when I was a teenager that has led me to believe that I am now living in an alternate timeline. When I was a teenager, I would occasionally get 30-second or so glimpses into the future in dreams. Unfortunately, these glimpses were always of no real use, since they would be random glimpses into my ordinary life that would come true over the course of about a week. Well, one time I had a glimpse that I was cast in a play in high school, and during the course of a rehearsal, I knocked over something and everyone there laughed at me. Long story short, I was cast in a play and I could see the same situation starting to unfold, so I took the object in question and moved it as far away from myself as I could. I didn't end up knocking it over and life continued on, but now I still have the memory of how things could have unfolded." Next, up number 4 now, we have the parallel door. This one comes from Reddit user Zinister11. It's a little hard to follow, but it certainly creeped me out. Don't worry, I'll read slowly. Zinister said, "My girlfriend Heather and her son Tyler and Tyler's 2-year-old son live with us. The 2-year-old boy has a bedroom at the back of our bedroom through a door. Tyler went to the store and had his girlfriend watching over the boy. Heather and I were in our bedroom when all of a sudden we heard the boy crying and making a racket, so Heather got up and opened the door, looked in it and said, 'Damn it,' she locked the boy in his room. He had another doorway to the hall. I looked in and saw the boy turning the doorknob, trying to open it. She asked me to go and unlock it, so of course I went around and down the hall, got to the end of the hall, and the door he was just trying to open wasn't there, just the door frame. He was laying on his bed peacefully. When we moved here, it didn't have a door. I was confused as hell, but walked back and told Heather it didn't have a door. It didn't make any sense, like a door was definitely there. I got the guts to ask Heather if she remembered anything about that door. She turned with wide eyes and said, 'Yes, I do. He was pawing at the door. I remember it. It happened. I'll never forget. It must be our next timeline crossed over to ours.' So essentially, the door that the child was locked behind suddenly disappeared. What is going on there?" Next, on number 3 now, we have the senses. This is a really weird one from Jimmy Soul on Reddit. It sparked a huge debate about what the explanation for this was. Let's just hear it first before we try and explain it ourselves. They said, "While at a festival, a man walked up to me and stared me dead in the eyes. His irises were so dark that it was impossible for me to distinguish his pupils. He spoke and said, 'What was that? Do you see it?' I suddenly saw a bright array of colours surrounding him, much like what I'd call an aura. 'Can you hear it?' he said. The aura faded away and I heard a bunch of high-pitched harmonic hums resembling an ensemble of singing bowls. Then he said, 'Perhaps you can smell it.' The sound was no longer present, but I smelled an indescribable fragrance. This might be a stretch, but I thought it smelled like lavender. Then he said, 'Or can you taste it?' I experienced a taste in my mouth similar to that of a cough drop. My mind was blown. From what I experienced, this man was playing with my senses, simply by looking at me and speaking. It was as if he had a special consciousness. I asked his name and he said, "I have no name." He walked away and I never saw him again. Wow, okay guys, so that one was pretty weird. Some people laughed at this story and said that it was just dehydration, or maybe he was sleep deprived, or that the mystery man had hypnotized him. Others are convinced that this was a being from a parallel universe who was perhaps just as surprised that he could be seen as the storyteller was to see him. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Gavin. This is one that I could have put in a time traveling video or a parallel universe video, just see what you guys make of it. Reddit user Theus Eus said, "Now this happened when I was around 16 years old. I was a fairly normal kid, spent a bit too much time on the computer though, so I made a lot of friends with both nerdy kids and popular kids. It all starts when I met this nerdy kid who I'll call Gavin for the sake of the story. Gavin and I started becoming decent friends because of our interest in WoW. Gavin was a really socially awkward guy in real life, although he's a cool dude to talk to online. He's also a genius who has an IQ of around 180 as far as I remember. I did the same test that he did in school and got 103, so it's the real deal. Gavin and I came to each other's houses a lot after we became good friends. We would chill, play WoW, watch videos on YouTube, play chess, that sort of thing. He was a pretty cool guy, and soon enough he was one of my best friends. One day I decided to go over to his house uninvited. It might have been the wrong move, but I was a teenager at the time and I just thought we were really good friends, so it was cool. I knocked on his door and this older looking guy opened. He was around 40. He had a little bit of grey hair and a beard. Now at first I assumed this was Gavin's dad because they looked eerily similar, but then I remember that Gavin didn't live with his dad. I then assumed that he was a relative. I asked him if Gavin was home. He laughed and told me that he is Gavin. I found this a bit weird, but it could have been a coincidence, or Gavin was simply named after his uncle. I told him that I'm looking for a 16-year-old Gavin, described him to the guy, and he started looking uneasy. After some hesitation, he said Gavin was not home. I asked him when he was going to get home and didn't really go into questioning who he was, and he gave me a time after thinking for a few seconds. So then I came over at the given time and suddenly my 16-year-old friend Gavin opened the door. I told him that his relative was there. He told me that he has no relative with the same name as him, and he also told me that he was home at the time I came and met that 40-year-old. We both found this extremely weird, and our only explanation is time travel. I still keep in touch with Gavin, who happens to be studying quantum mechanics at the time. We haven't told anyone this story. And finally, number 1 now, we have Save Yourself. If we accept that parallel universes are real and that people can travel between them, could you affect things in your own past that would change your world today? Again, this story might be a bit of a time travel one. See for yourself. Reddit user Goonzoo said, "I once had a weird dream when I was driving home and listening to some oldies. It was raining a bit and the wind was quite heavy. After a while I saw a heavily damaged car on the left side of the road. The driver must have hit a tree. I stopped my car to call the ambulance and to look for the driver. It was a woman in her mid-20s with short curly blonde hair. She was unconscious, but there was some blood. She wasn't breathing, so I dragged her out of the car to give her first aid. After a while I heard the sirens of the ambulance. I quickly looked in the direction of where the ambulance was coming and then back to the woman. She suddenly had her eyes wide open and a look of total terror in her face. The dream then ended there. Some weeks ago we celebrated my 25th birthday. I got some awesome presents, but one was very special. My uncle made a photo collage of my family. He found them in an old box, as he mentioned. I already had some shots, so I decided to put it in the corner of my room with the other presents. When I was about to leave the room, the collage fell over, so I turned back to arrange it properly. While doing it, I glanced over the photos. I've never seen old pictures of my parents before, so I was quite curious after all. There was a wedding photo of my parents. I recognized my dad. He looked really sharp in his suit. Next to him was a lady that was gorgeous and pregnant. It looked like she had some wounds or scars on her arm and her neck. Then it all kicked in. She was the woman I dragged out of the car to give first aid to. My whole body trembled. I immediately ran to my dad to ask what happened back then. He told me that she had a car accident 25 years ago. When the ambulance and police arrived, she laid on the street and a man was running away from her body. The doctor told my dad that if my mother didn't get first aid when she did in that situation, she may have lost her unborn child because of lack of oxygen. So essentially he saved himself. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the death. This one comes from Reddit user DQ Supervisor, who said, "Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but I can't find a better explanation. I was driving down County Road 28 just outside of my city. The road is basically a straight line for a bit, and I watched a car driving toward me in the opposite lane. It had blue headlights, and as it got closer I saw that it was a black two-door car. As the car got up to me, it hit me head on. I saw my windshield smash, I saw the car roll over mine, I smelled the smoke. I felt all of the pain. I closed my eyes, I think I died. Then I opened them again and I was in the same spot as I was less than about a minute before this person hit me. I saw the same car with the same blue headlights. As I got closer, I saw it was a two-door black car. I was freaking out because this car had just hit me a minute before, but it just kept on driving past and did not hit me. I 100% believe that that car did hit me. I will be finding another way to drive home from now on. Has anybody else experienced this? I do not have another explanation. All input and questions welcome. I must have got pushed from that universe into this one. Maybe not. I don't know anything about this stuff, but nothing else makes sense. At the number 9 spot now, we have The Passengers. This one came from Mark of Shame on Reddit. For some reason, this one felt really real to me. They said, driving home on a storm day, I see that a side road up to the local golf course is blocked off by flashing barricades. I also spy a Mercedes parked past the barricade with its hazards on. I stop and walk up to the car to see if they need help. I'm an EMT. I shine my light into the back seat to see a man slumped over, apparently asleep. Thinking I've got a few drunks, I move up to the driver window and rap on the glass and shine my light in. The driver is sitting bolt upright, unmoving, staring straight ahead. My window rapping or light doesn't cause him to blink, flinch or move. I look over and the passenger is slumped forward onto the dash. This begins to creep me out. I call down to the sheriff's station and request a code 2 unit up to my location to help me check them out because the doors are locked. While on the phone, I walk back to the truck to get my go bag. As I'm on the phone with dispatch, she asked me to get a license number for the car just as a PG&E cherry picker truck comes rumbling down from up the closed road. I move to go around the truck to get the plate number and the car is gone. I talked to the driver of the truck and he said there was an 80-foot tree down across the road and that he didn't think it to be open for at least a day or so. So the question is, where the hell did the car go? Tree up one way, barricades down the other. It's kept me a bit unsettled when stopping at accidents and hazards ever since then. Coming at number 8 now, we have Changing Faces. Reddit user HighAerie1 commented in a parallel universe thread saying that for a single day his parents' faces swapped. People obviously asked for more details. He said, I woke up in the morning and at first I didn't realize anything was weird because it was like 6 AM and I was still half asleep. But after showering for school and waking up a bit, I noticed that there was something weird about my mom. Then I realized it wasn't my mom, it was my dad, but he had my mom's face. I was gonna say something, but then my little brother got up and was like, good morning dad, like everything was normal. Then, before I had time to process everything, I had to leave for school. Everything was fine at school and I almost forgot all about it. But when I got home, I saw my dad again, still with my mom's face. Then my mom walks in and starts talking to him, and she has his face. At this point, I am just dumbfounded. I have no idea what's going on. So I just sit down and start doing my homework. And when my little brothers get back from school, they just act like nothing is wrong. So I just decided to go with it and not say anything at all. I mean, I didn't want them to think I was going crazy or anything. I woke up the next morning and everything is just back to normal, but I still have dreams about it sometimes. Moving on to number 7 now, we have The Garden. This is a strange one that comes from Stefan1403, whose story involves 3 generations of his family. He said, it was summer and my grandfather, grandmother, mom and I were working in the garden. It's pretty big and there's a lot of grass to be mowed and stuff like that. After all the work, my mom would always ask me to go and get some soda because everyone was thirsty from working. It was in the evening, but still pretty warm. After everyone had their soda, my mom asked me to put it in the back of the fridge, which was in the basement. Used as a living area, only a small part of it is really storage. So I go to the basement, and please note, the room with the fridge is like 20 or 30 seconds from the exit, and you have to pass 2 doors with those flappy anti-fly curtains. I put the soda in the fridge, close the fridge, and walk out. Seems normal, right? Except I had to do this 3 times. The soda kept reappearing whenever I put it in the fridge and turned my back on it. Everyone was outside and there was only one bottle of soda in the whole room. To this day, I am still confused over what exactly happened. There have probably been more moments like this in my life, but this is the one that I remember the most. At the number 6 spot now, guys, we have crossed wires. This one involves answering machines, hopefully. Some of you guys aren't too young to even know what they are. The story comes from Reddit user Kill All Extremists. They said, this happened about 15 years ago. I called my friend up and he wasn't home, so I left a message on his answering machine. I said, hey, it's me. Sorry I missed you. Call you later. Bye. And then I hung up and left the house. I made no other calls. Later that day, he called back and he says, wow, that was quite a message you left. Who was that girl you were talking to? I was like, what are you talking about? I wasn't talking to any girl. Well, as it turns out, the message didn't end after I said bye. I actually had to go over to his house and listen to this message a few times for myself. After my initial message that I did leave, as I already quoted, there was a slight pause and it continues on for another 30 to 40 seconds or so with me talking to some girl. It was my voice, but a conversation I never had with a girl whose voice I didn't recognize. You could compare it to the message I know I did leave, and the two voices were indistinguishable. Not just the voice, but talking mannerisms. It was my voice. Also, references to my occupation and activities were the same. Basically, in this conversation, I was talking to this girl about going skiing, but I had to go down to my shop and work on a car first, which totally correlated to me. Then the message just stopped. It was recorded on one of those digital answering machines that recorded the message to a chip, so there was no tape I could have taken and had analyzed, unfortunately. Also, neither I nor my friend had party lines, so that's not an explanation. It was very freaky and I just can't explain it. Moving on to the number 5 spot now, we have the closet. To get to Narnia, you have to go through the wardrobe. Everyone knows that. Do they also lead to other parallel worlds though? Reddit user Meanest Flower said, in my parents' bedroom was this really large master closet. It was technically just one closet, but it had 2 doors going into it. Between the 2 doors was a high shelf and a hanging rod for clothes, so it functioned like 2 separate walk-in closets, but you could walk from one to the other by ducking under any clothes hung in the middle. One night, she was in her side of the closet and she saw through the gap between the shelf and the clothes rod my dad walk into his side of the closet. She heard the metal coat hanger sliding as he looked for something to wear and saw the clothes in the middle sway as they were brushed from side to side. From her side of the closet, she started talking to him about something random. Then she heard the bathroom door open. She poked her head out of the closet to see my dad clearly just emerging from the shower. He walked to look into his side of the closet and nothing. And up until the moment she poked her head out to look at the bathroom door, she would swear to you she could still see my dad in that closet. Next up at number 4 now, we have the money. This one comes from Reddit user ShadowJack00. The story is actually from a friend of theirs. They said, a friend of mine from Toronto was in a bar in New York on a business trip. As he paid for drinks and food a few times during the night, he noticed a woman watching him intently. After a while, she came over and struck up a conversation with him. Eventually, she commented that she noticed he had colored money in his wallet. She seemed, as he put it, eager to the point of being afraid to mention it. He told her, yes, he was Canadian and he had some Canadian money in his wallet. She demanded he show her, and so he did. She was apparently very disappointed and started to cry a bit, but refused to talk about it any further. Feeling bad, he tried to cheer her up and the two of them got a bit hammered together. He admitted that his goal was to not spend the night alone, but he did anyway. At one point, he asked her why she wanted to see his Canadian money, and after a lot of coaxing and more drinks, she told him. She said that up until a few months before, US money had always been different colors. Ones were green, 10s were blue, and 100s were brown. She couldn't remember the other colors, she told him. She said the colors were not bright like Canadian money, but were sort of a set of dark tints. She said the brown 100s were called bricks because the brown tint they had was similar to a brick. Then she said one day they were all green, and she was the only one who seemed to remember them being different colors. My friend pressed her, and she said there were other differences too, not just money that she noticed. Popular TV programs were different or had the wrong actors in the lead roles. There was more, but my friend couldn't remember what else she said. After a while, she just started crying, saying she finally thought she had found someone who would convince her she wasn't going crazy, and he turned out to be a Canadian instead. Shortly after, she left, and that was the end of that. Moving on to number 3 now, guys, we have Quantum Thief. Now that has to be possibly the coolest name I've ever given to a story on this channel. I bet that will be a movie title one day. Anyway, this one comes from Reddit user Naimaz, who said, ever since I was a kid, I have what I call doubling occasionally happen around me. I put something in a pocket, then later find it in another pocket, as well as the original in the original pocket that I put it in. And yes, it has happened to money before. The most standout example was when I was a teen at camp. All the leaders had engraved plastic name tags, and we were issued only one. I used to keep moving mine between my hat and my shirt. At the end of camp, I just crammed all my stuff in a duffel bag and headed home. Later, when I unpacked, the first thing I do is to pull out my hat with the tag on it. Okay, so that's where I had it last, I thought. And of course, a minute later, I pull out a shirt with the same name tag pinned to it. I also experienced a similar phenomenon when I was a kid. For a few years, it happened on a daily basis, but haven't seen it in a long time now. Someone would place something in their pocket or backpack, but when they went to grab it later, it would be missing. I would then reach into my backpack or pocket and pull the item out. I initially got accused a lot of being a thief, but when it happened repeatedly, when I hadn't even been within 20 feet of the victim, my friends and classmates stopped doing so and just kind of accepted that would always happen around me. Next up at number 2 now, we have pancakes. This is a very recent one posted to Reddit by user Julesmer, who said, when I was around 7 or 8, I distinctly remember going to a restaurant and getting a plate full of fruit and then heading back to my hotel and went to the hot tub. My sister Alex and I were talking about the activities we had done that day, and before we knew it, we headed back to our room. Our parents were at the casino and had left us pancakes and a note saying they'd be back in a few hours. We went to bed and had this dream that there was a bunch of lights with my sister's voice in the background. When I had awoken, me and my sister were in a cabin in a completely different state. I went to wake up my sister and I told her about my dream. It turns out we both had the same one, but instead of me hearing her voice, she heard mine. We both had no clue what to do, so we walked around. There had been a hot tub near our cabin and the same lady working at the other restaurant. We had talked about going to the fruit bar with our parents and had asked them if we drove to a different place while we were sleeping, but they just gave us a strange look and asked us what we were talking about. To this day, me and my sister still talk about what happened that night and think of new theories to explain what happened to us. And finally at number 1 now, we have Janet's dead. It would be pretty terrifying if someone your family thought was dead just walked into your home. It would be even more terrifying though if you were the only one who realized it. This Reddit user said, last night I was on the phone with my mom and she told me to come over for dinner. Everything was going great. Then suddenly she comes out with, Janet is going to be there. I was like, very funny mom, great one. But in my head I was thinking, that's really not funny. Why would you say something like that? Then my mom keeps going on with this. You haven't seen her in forever. It'll be nice. Janet died last year though. I have a vivid memory of it. I did not attend the funeral, but I remember everyone talking about it and making a scene of it because she died young. She died of cancer, and I remember her husband coming to visit and being very depressed. I never saw her body or anything, but I am 1000% certain this woman is dead, and I remember many family members talking about it. I never saw the body or visited her grave, and I wasn't that close with her, so I never had much grief over it. But I have vivid memories of her dying and my relatives being depressed over it. I was really weirded out by my mom on the phone, and finally I came out and said, Janet's dead, what are you talking about? And my mom just kept talking like it was ridiculous or like I was kidding around. She jokingly said, she's back, or something like that. I asked my dad later on and he looked at me like I was insane. I also can't find the obituary online, but I never looked for it to begin with.
Starting us off like we always do, in at number 10, have you guys ever heard of the man from Tord? Well, this might actually be a real life time traveler. And this isn't just any time traveler. This is a time traveler who might have come from a parallel universe very similar to ours. Let me tell you guys this story. Back in 1954, officials at a Tokyo airport in Japan were confronted by a traveler from Europe with a passport from a country called Tord. If you guys look on any map and search Tord or try to search for it, well, you'll notice that it actually doesn't exist. So obviously this has to be a fake passport, right? But why would someone create a fake passport with a made-up country? I mean, it's pretty silly. So officials looked more into this claim. The man from apparently Torrid seemed very angry for the holdup and he was serious when he told officials where he was from. When he was asked to show on a map where this place is located, he wasn't able to exactly point to it because it wasn't labeled, but it was located around here. He circles a place called Andorra. The man stated that this is his third trip this year to Japan from his company that's located in Torrid, his country. He said Torrid has been a country for thousands of years, but officials could not find proof of this claim. The man was taken into a nearby hotel where he was closely monitored while officials figured out this man's story. Like, what is going on? He did have a passport that showed Torrid on it, and the strange thing is this passport actually looked like an official one. Well, the next morning this man seemed to have just disappeared, and there's no way out of the hotel room without being seen. He was surrounded the whole time and monitored. Also, all of the paperwork the officials took in also seemed to disappear. I mean, is this real life right now? Apparently this is a 100% true story. I personally don't believe it myself. I'm pretty sure there's a movie out there based on this as well, based on a true story it says. It's insane. Could this man actually be from a parallel universe? Well, that's a question we may never have answered. From there, at number 9, let's talk about the Mandela effect. Well, this is a theory that maybe some of us have been living in an alternate universe. The Mandela effect is when you think something is one way, but as it turns out, it's something completely different. It's like an alternate reality for some of us. For an example, take a look at this. Do you guys think it's Looney Tunes or Looney Tunes? Is it spelled T-U-N-E-S or T-O-O-N-S? Let me know in the comment section below. I'll give you guys a few moments. Go down there, let me know what you guys think, and I'm gonna reveal it right now. Well, if you guys said Looney Tunes, T-O-O-N-S, well, you might be from a parallel universe because you're wrong. But how scary is that? Like 50% of the population is wrong. Are we all from a different universe? I thought it was T-O-O-N-S. There's no way it's T-U-N-E-S. Here's another one. Is it Berenstein Bears or Berenstein Bears? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, is it Oscar Mayer or Oscar Mayer? Is it Skechers or Skechers? Well, let me know all your guys' answers in the comment section below. Number 8, let's move on to a woman from a parallel universe. I'm talking about Lorena Garcia Gordo. Well, this is her story. On the morning back in 2008, she woke up to discover that there was differences in her life. Differences that made her really wonder if she woke up in another universe. When she woke up, her sheets were a different color. Well, maybe she forgot that she changed her sheets, so not a big deal here. Well, get this. When she went to her office job, a place that she's worked at for the past 20 years, that's when she really noticed like differences. She noticed new people, and she worked for a different department. She was very confused, so she actually called an ex-boyfriend she dated 6 months ago, and she was with this person for 7 years. But when she called the number, she discovered that it wasn't her boyfriend's phone number, and the person she was looking for actually doesn't exist. And at one point she thought maybe she was drugged or had alcohol in her. She's very confused. She's not in the right state of mind due to the drugs. So she went to the doctors and tests showed that there was nothing inside of her. Lorena had all these memories that apparently never happened. She told her family she remembered a shoulder surgery that her younger sister had, but she asked her and that never happened as well. Her family thought she was going crazy. No one could figure out what was going on and how she has all these different memories that just never happened. I mean, detailed memories. Did she wake up in an alternate reality or a parallel universe? This is also something known as the Mandela effect that I was telling you guys about. It's when you remember a lot of things differently that has happened that it actually hasn't happened. But how do you remember a younger sister having surgery and she never did? I mean, I don't think that is part of the Mandela effect. At number 7, we have the boy who lived before.
He used to say when I was a girl I had black hair, or he'd say I used to have earrings like that when I was a girl.
The stay-at-home mom wondered where was he getting these ideas. Luke's answer changed their lives forever.
Well, this is Luke, who is from Ohio, and he believes he was reincarnated. His past life was a woman named Pam. He said that he died in his past life and he went up to heaven, and then he was reborn again to what you guys see right now, Luke. Well, kids say the darndest things, but Luke's mom was really confused. So she tested Luke in his memory of Pam, and what was revealed was very scary. He said that he died in a fire in Chicago. He said he jumped out of a building. Listen to this.
In March 1993, a massive fire raced through the property, trapping most residents. 19 died, including a woman in her 30s named Pamela Robinson.
Pam had jumped out of a window to her death. I was really kind of weirded out by it at this point.
Is this real life right now? I don't even know how I would feel after confirming Luke's story that he remembers everything about his past life. This kid is only 5 years old. I know they have imaginary stories, but this one went into great detail. He was continuing to be tested, and he was shown a bunch of images of random people. One of them was Pam. She was mixed in there, and he was easily able to pick her out and said, she looks very familiar.
And he pointed to the correct one.
So Pam.
Took me a couple days to wrap my head around it. I couldn't sleep. I thought about it constantly.
The family then looked into Pam's life to see if this is actually a real person, and she was. And then they started comparing her life to his life, and there was way too many similarities.
That Pam was a big like Stevie Wonder fan, and Luke like really likes that era of music. She played the keyboard a lot. And one of the things that Luke, his favorite toy at the time was this little tiny piano that he would tote around with them.
Alright, number 6. This one isn't a story, but it's more of a theory. So let's talk about the theory of having infinity universes. This theory actually scares a lot of people. I mean, the idea that our universe is just so minuscule in comparison to the infinite amount of universes. There's an idea that at any moment our universe could just be erased like in an instant. It's almost like, just imagine the real life Thanos snap, and then boom, everyone on Earth became the victim. There's actually a phobia called aperiophobia. This is a fear of infinity, or even the fear of living forever. Would you guys be afraid if you can live forever? Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on that. For me, I'm not sure how it would feel. I mean, everyone around you would just be moving on to the afterlife, and you're just kind of here on Earth. Stephen Hawking believed we can live in multi-universes, and it was actually his last paper he wrote before he passed away. So is this idea really that crazy? Well, I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Number 5, we have Goddess Allison. She's a YouTuber who has claimed she indeed traveled through time. She went through another timeline.
Hello everyone, Goddess Allison here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about parallel timelines or parallel universes. And the reason for this is because I visited a parallel timeline.
She was taken into another world, and this took place in 2016 in October. She was taken early in the morning between 3:30 a.m. to about 6:30 in the morning. Well, Goddess spent 3 days in an alternate universe where she stayed in a hospital for 3 days. I think this parallel universe is called the psychiatric center. Well, this is a really scary story because people do believe that they have traveled into another universe. And wait till you guys hear about the kid who can actually prove that he lived in another time frame as another person. He's coming up at number 1, so make sure you stay tuned. Well, going back to Goddess for a moment, while watching her video, it's very confusing. I don't know anything she's talking about because I'm not that smart of a person, but to me it kind of sounds like she might be making some things up.
I think after having this experience, I think that we all live in one same universe that operates on the same laws of physics and quantum physics, on the same laws of perhaps geometric fractal of the plutonic solids that fit inside each other.
Okay, my brain kind of hurts with all of that information, so let's move on. Number 4.
What I'm about to tell you is something that I haven't even told my children, nor my grandchildren. My own wife doesn't even know what I'm about to tell you.
So this is Alexander Smith, who claims that he has traveled to the year 2118. That's about 99 years into the future. That is absolutely insane, but kind of cool. I would have so many questions for this guy, like, did Elon Musk actually make it to Mars? Did we become cyborgs? Is YouTube still around? Is Top 10 channel still around? Well, this guy's pretty lucky to have the opportunity to know what the future unfolds.
We didn't know if it would work. Sat me in a small room and we had many meetings. I had meetings with various scientists telling me what to expect, telling me what to do during the process of the actual time traveling itself.
This guy actually believes that the government and secret scientists, like the secret society, actually sent him to the future. Number 3, I really don't believe that time travel is real, but then again, there's been events in history and even stories that people have told that might show small signs that traveling to another universe or time traveling might actually be plausible. Have you guys ever seen this picture right here? Well, it's a black and white picture, but if you guys look right over here, you guys will notice that this woman is holding something. Well, that something is a cell phone. Well, let me put this into perspective for you guys. This picture was taken in 1938. Cell phones were invented by Martin Cooper in 1973. He was only 10 years old in 1938, so how was this picture even taken? Well, how does that woman have that cell phone? Phones weren't even thought of. There are many conspiracy theories and scary stories that surround this woman, and why or how she has a cell phone. It doesn't make sense. No one even knows who this woman is. This is a very interesting picture that is just simply unexplained. Maybe she's a time traveler, and Alexander Smith might have actually traveled to the year 2118. Number 2, we have Paul Dinac, who is a Swiss language teacher who went into a coma from 1921 to 1922. When he came out of his coma, he shared a fascinating story with the world. Well, he didn't directly share it. Let me explain. When he came out of his coma, he said that he traveled to the year 3906 AD as a man named Andrew Northman, who was a famous physician. When he woke up, he acquired a great understanding of physics, and he went on to write down his experience in a book he published titled Valley of the Roses. He talked about what the future was like. Earth was able to colonize Mars in about 200 years, but there was a tragedy to the 20 million people living on Mars. So I guess that kind of answers the question we had before. Did Elon Musk reach Mars? I guess it's a no. And if everyone dies on Mars, maybe we should try and colonize somewhere else. The scary part about this whole thing is the fact that Paul's journal entry, which was very detailed, he actually didn't want anyone to read them or even know about them. It was only when he gave his journals to his students, they released it to the public, and that's when Paul's story was known. Can this story be real? I guess we're gonna have to wait 200 years to find out if this man was right. Finally, number 1, we have yet another boy, Cameron, who has memories of a past life. Now, this gets crazy. And he's also 5 years old, which is actually the same age as the boy Luke we talked about on this list at number 7. Well, since Cameron was able to talk, he started talking about a past life, a life that took place 220 miles away from where he lives.
I lived in the White House with my mum and dad and my 3 brothers and sisters.
The big problem with that story is that Cameron only has 1 brother. So who is he talking about? As Cameron got older, his story remained the same. It only got more detailed. He remembers his former parents' name. Many doctors and experts have actually taken interest in this fascinating story. Psychologists has even met with them. They met with Cameron and the family to find out if the story is real or maybe it's just all made up.
Really interesting. Basically, how Cameron describes his world really seems to be quite different from how children with imaginary friends and imaginary worlds describe their experiences.
Cameron, as he got older, kept asking his mom if they can visit where he used to live, and the family over time just said, yeah, let's go. Well, they traveled 220 miles away to the small town to see what would happen, to see if what he's saying actually exists. The mother thought maybe this would convince Cameron that this is just a fantasy in his head, and this past life, yeah, it never happened. Well, he remembered everything. They actually found the house that he described in much detail. If you guys want to see the full documentary, it's really fascinating to me, it's really interesting to me. Well, it's called The Boy Who Lived Before. Check it out on YouTube, it's really good.